Hey, how's it going, folks? It's Abdullah,
And Bean.
and welcome back for another episode of Moments in Weed, our companion series to great moments in weed history, in which we cover topics of the current day involving cannabis. Isn't that right, Bean?
That is why I'm here. I saw it on my Google Calendar alert 5 seconds before I remember. Zoom, zoom, zoom.
It's
Yeah,
the holidays. We're allowed some slack.
I think I'm still high from our last. I'm going to give a little preview. We had a holiday hashish hot box going when we recorded the big year-end episode that is going to drop very soon, and I believe I am still tapering down from that high.
It was really intense because essentially what we smoked was a pre-roll stuffy. Now, I'd like to note that Bean and I do not use pre-roll stuffies. We are old school gentlemen who roll. But this particular pre-roll stuffy, instead of paper, it had just hash. It was literally a cone of just hash. So we stuffied it and we smoked it in the very small room in Palm Springs, where I usually record. It was so great to get high in the same room. Still, you and Elise are the only people that I will pass joints with. Anyone else in the world, if you see me passing joints with Bean and think that I'll pass with you, you're wrong. Unless you're like my girlfriend, like my brother. There's a very, very close circle here of passing. But so we passed this thing back and forth, and like at some point we weren't even hitting it. It was just dissipating into the air and just fucking getting us stoned. The air conditioning was off. It was a very, very baked recording session.
Speaking of, I think let's kick this one off.
Do it. I've been waiting for this.
Moment in weed, and certainly happily to virtually. Why would you want to join it like that? Okay, virtually
If we do it
pass
at the
that
same
joint.
time, it's like whoop.
The cross. Virtually passing it to all of you, and probably watching this on Patreon. Glad to have you. Otherwise, we're just two guys smoking weed talking to each other, which is also what we are. Got a good story for you today. It's late breaking news, too late to break into our year in review episode, but one that is certainly on par. A very exciting, very cool story.
Hear it.
We are going international.
Fantastic. An international moment in weed.
We are going to a country that I had to look up on Google Maps to make sure I was sure where it was.
No shit. Okay, interesting. I'm trying to think which continent the American public school system has failed you in recognizing.
I have a good hold on where Canada and Mexico are generally. And then there's it was
I just know enough rivers and lakes to get through about half of a Jeopardy category of such.
No, you were correct. If Jeopardy was all geography, I would have been standing A counted on that one pretty hard. But yeah. Okay, here we go. Do you know what the smallest country in Europe other than the Vatican is?
Liechtenstein or Luxembourg or Monaco?
That's probably all correct. I think I got they can't all be the smallest, but I believe they possibly are all smaller than this country. Ladies and gentlemen, going into the new year, this is going to be a weekly show. Ladies and gentlemen, and non-binary listeners of all kinds. This is going to be a weekly show about the news, and I promise you, I personally am going to put just a slighter bit more preparation in.
We're going to tighten things up. We're cracking the whip internally. We're going to tighten things up a little bit. I'm glad that I also kind of phoned in my one cool thing. I'm glad that this is leading up to that, like, very appropriately. But which country is it? Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say we have a bit of senioritis, meaning this is like the last episode of the year, but now we may just be edging towards senioritis in the old person sense.
I've forgotten why we're here.
I don't even know what I'm. Okay, it may or may not be the smallest country in Europe, but we are talking about Malta today.
Ah, of course. Another tiny country.
Tiny countries in the wine. Uh, Big in the world of weed this week because they are set to become the first country in Europe to legalize cannabis.
Wow, fantastic. And so when we say legalize, we mean fully? Is it medical? What are the details?
The details, usually the devil is in the details, but here, what makes me so excited is the details are that there's going to be no regulated for-profit economy, but they are allowing the creation of one home grow, but also collectives of up to 500 people.
That's fantastic. Okay, so the way that you just described that, again, like not looking at the extensive details of this, that is like an ideal way of legalizing cannabis, right? Is starting with just the home grows and the care collectives, right? So you can say, I have a right to grow 6 plants, but I give that right to this one person who's an expert grower. The fact that that person can get up to 500 people on their, weed collective is fantastic, because that means that a group of expert people or an expert person can grow high quality cannabis for individuals who require it for, medical or personal or spiritual reasons or whatever it might be. And this is sort of, what took shape under Prop 215 in California. It was the caregiving collective model. And this is prior to, very stringent licensing and all the bullshit that has kind of fucked up the cannabis industry here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This in a way reminds me of episodes like our episodes about Dennis Perone and Brownie Mary in the early Prop 215 era, and even pre Prop 215, doing it underground, and our episode about Wham, which grew and at various times was more than 500 people, but it's easy to picture 500 people, a collective garden that's big enough to serve all their needs. As you say, home grow is an essential right, but that doesn't mean every individual person can or wants to grow their own cannabis. And certainly not every person, hey, if you have a chance to grow cannabis, you will get cannabis and it will be good, but that doesn't mean you're going to be a master grower. And let me just read to you from this article from our good friend of both podcasts, Kyle Yeager at Marijuana Moment.
Woo! Shout out.
Big shout out. Cannabis clubs that would be authorized under the bill could have as many as 500 members and would be limited to distributing 7 grams per day to each member, with a maximum of 50 grams per month. They could also distribute up to 20 cannabis seeds per member each month.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So that's a quarter ounce a day, which is a good amount of flowers. I mean, of course, that gets complicated when you get into like concentrates and edibles, because 7 grams of cannabis is not always equivalent to 7 grams of cannabis concentrate, or the weight of food into which cannabis is infused. I remember this being an issue early on, and it's really hilarious because they would be like, oh yeah, so you can go into any Colorado dispensary and buy 7 grams of mixed flour and concentrate. And it's like, dude, 7 grams of concentrate is like a pound of flowers. You know what I'm saying? Or like a quarter pound of flowers, maybe. But it is like, it's significantly more THC substance. So I mean, but that's pretty good. I don't love limitations on what a plant yields in general. It's like if you have a cornfield, they're not going to be like, you can't take more than a pound of corn off of each plant. You know what I mean? So like, that's a little, like not my favorite thing necessarily, but at the same time, that's a really good start. A lot of times we see these laws, start from somewhere and then kind of evolve. If, as in America in recreational cannabis, they're starting from, let's get as much tax revenue as we can, you're going to see a ballooning black market. Their priorities are fucked up from the get, right? But here, where it's like the priority is no sales, no actual like, marketing, branding, selling of cannabis, cultivation of cannabis for sale, but each individual person can grow. This is such a good starting point. I think all 11 people who live in Malta are going to benefit greatly from this.
Maybe 13? Well, I haven't looked up what like a 2-bedroom apartment, and then we'd
Yeah,
need a little podcasting office to share. Uh,
yeah.
Live from Malta in
The
beautiful
only
downtown Malta City.
Maltese in the like at the heart of the Maltese Falcon, the center of Malta. That's the only
Ah!
thing I know about Malta is the Maltese Falcon.
All right. Great moments in weed history. Patreon movie club. We'll all watch the Maltese Falcon high and reconnect on that. I want to point out to what you were saying. You know, there's more information in this article, and in future episodes of this show, we'll, as we said, be a little better prepared. But the other big takeaway is the people promoting this legislation and ultimately getting it passed in Malta. They are looking at what has happened in places like California very specifically, because another thing that came up was the opposition pushed really hard for THC limits, which is something we see happening in different states in the US, and it's become sort of the new talking point for prohibitionists. Oh, okay, we lost on weed, but now it's too strong. Meanwhile, Everclear is in the supermarket.
I know 151 is a brand. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, it's basically rubbing alcohol. So fucked.
And this guy, the politician from Malta, was just like, well, that's just going to push people into the underground market, which is what we don't want. So no. And then this is what the opposition ultimately came up with. Their last ditch against this is, oh, they're just legalizing cannabis in Malta because it's popular and they want people to vote for them.
You know what the meaning of the word popular is, right? It means most of the people. So I'm guessing at least 6 to 7 people in Malta want this to happen.
Landslide.
And it's literally the 4 or 5 people who don't want it are definitely the grandparents of the 6 or 7. No shade to our old stoners. Just a joke.
Yes. And so, at the end of this article, it just says other places in Europe that are very far along on this path is Germany. The new coalition government that just took power is going to legalize if they get their way. Luxembourg, they are moving through the parliament with some legalization that has a good chance of passing. And
Luxembourg, 6 weeks as not the smallest country in Europe.
And then and Italy is going to vote on a referendum later this year. So this wave that we've seen building is definitely coming to Europe. And if Malta is any example, maybe not in size, but in
spirit,
in
right?
spirit, yeah, there perhaps is, the idea of looking skeptically at some of the excesses of capitalism is much more widespread outside of the United States. So, this idea that we may see different versions of legalization around the world is a very exciting one in this case.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think it's ultimately heading towards a sort of like congealing of those rules, right? A lot of different places are trying a lot of different things, right? Europe has been pretty experimental in terms of the way they're legalizing. In the US, it's like medical, recreational, CBD only. I don't think there's any other real definitions, maybe decrim in certain cities. But in Europe, you've seen in Spain, there's like the, private property rule or, whatever, home grow rules that are very specific to Spain, but it's not legal for sale or whatever, right? And then you have like Portugal, where because of the AIDS epidemic, they legalized all drugs. And instead of, jailing people for drug use, they would, recommend treatment or whatever. This is the public health approach versus criminal justice approach to drug addiction, which we could really fucking learn from here in the United States. And then, of course, in Malta, this is also a pretty unique, system that they've got going on there as far as the rest of Europe is concerned, or as far as anywhere in the rest of the world is really concerned. And the Germany thing to me is interesting. I just saw that news recently, and I was like, that's pretty huge. Berlin, hands down, my favorite city in Europe. Definitely a great cannabis city. I remember being there and going to Görlitzer Park and buying, decent weed from a Nigerian dude. You know what I mean? It wasn't like swag, and it was pretty reasonably priced, and the guy was nice, and it was pretty chill. But at the same time, it's funny. It's like, the way America elected Trump at the same time that we, legalized cannabis for recreational use in our largest state. Like, I recently listened to that New York Times series Day X about like the, Nazi underground within the police and military in Germany, and how there's this like really terrifying contingent there. And then on the other side of the coin, they're also like legalizing cannabis. It just kind of reflects this like weird dichotomy that we've existed in for so many years. As cannabis becomes liberalized, like the world becomes more fascist. It's weird.
I think this, those are certainly data points that intersect. I think this, I've always said weed is not illegal because it's, weed is not anti-establishment because it's illegal. It's illegal because it's anti-establishment. And I do believe that. And I think the evidence is that point to one authoritarian, far right, whatever you want to call them, movement or person who has embraced cannabis. Let's just say it's like, yeah, they're stone Nazis. I've met them. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not the cure for being an asshole. It's just a good place to start. But in the wider sense, the consciousness around cannabis is rightfully seen as a threat to authoritarians and authoritarian movements. And, that's an aspect of being a part of this movement that gets challenged more and more, because as we're pulled into capitalism, as we're pulled into more quote unquote mainstream spaces, this sense of outsiderdom, this sense of challenging authority, and this sense of having been fucked with by authority and understanding in your bones what, when they talk about black helicopters, go to Humboldt, man. It was a decade of black
Sacramento
helicopters.
County. Yeah. It really is. They really are raining down from the sky, in these high-tech machines, and like, on like crazy Batman like grappling hooks and shit, which are all paid for by tax dollars, by the way. All that nice stuff. But it's interesting. I think the greatest fear, right, for cannabis advocates is having cannabis become so mainstream that it no longer becomes a sort of instrument of anti-establishment thinking, right? But fortunately, Mother Nature has us beat at every turn, because as you go from cannabis to the next psychedelic up to the next psychedelic up, it becomes harder and harder to deny after having those experiences that it's probably not good to be a white supremacist. I dare somebody to do a DMT trip and come back and still be white supremacist.
And just be like, listen, I met the Machine Elves. They were Nordic. And that's all I have to say. Oh, that's gosh.
Amazing.
All right. Well, God. Everyone, I guess another big announcement, although this one is satirical and not true, is new podcast, The Green Pill.
Yeah, dude. So an idea that was hatched during the recording of our holiday special, right? Right?
Oh, yeah. I thought you were going to finish that sentence.
Okay, we're very high. We're very high. That's the first time we've had complete dead air based on misinterpretation. You and I have hung out a lot. We've had a lot of long, we're able to have long conversations, as everyone who listens to the podcast knows. First time ever that we've gone more than a quarter of a second because we have no idea what the fuck is happening. So I've entirely forgotten the first segment of the show. How about you?
Malta.
That's right.
And I'll just say quickly, if you drop in the comments, we want the green pill, okay? Because we don't get very many comments. We get a lot of love, and we love the love. If you've listened this long and you want an episode of The Green Pill where we talk weed conspiracies, we will put sunglasses and disguises on these plants behind us and really get into the real shit. You want to hear about the real shit? Drop it in the comments.
Yo, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to echo that endorsement because I personally want to see the green pill happen because I think the thing you don't realize about great moments in weed history is it that it is researched and historic, right? We don't use dubious sources on this show. However, on the green pill, we are completely open to dubious sources, and we will utilize them, and we will put the pieces together, a la Beautiful Mind, and show you the full picture of our conspiratorial beliefs about cannabis.
That is correct. The first time I saw OG Kush was in a government lab.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I don't even really identify myself as like a drug dealer. You know what I mean?
The really smart drug dealers go on TV to talk about it. Anyway, that's your line, but I took it.
It is. This is the thing that I've stood by for a long time. Is that if you see a drug dealer giving an interview on a news show, that is not a good drug dealer. Okay. Good drug dealers make too much money and are at too much risk to ever fucking talk to any camera. They'd be like, no, there's no amount of exposure makes up for the profits that I'm making for this operation that I don't want blown up. But yeah, the green pill, I hope that people want to hear it because I want to do it.
All right, little heat check there on the green pill. One cool thing. I could use many cool things, but let's do the one cool thing.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so in this absolute shit show of a moment in weed that we're doing, which I'm thoroughly enjoying, I have actually been utilizing the one cool thing since the beginning of the show. All right, and this is not a branded product. It's not a thing. Bean and I were recently at Hall of Flowers, and we were handed all kinds of fantastic weed things of, and I saw, oh my God, look at all the different brands and stuff. And, definitely crossed my mind. Some of those products really stood out to me. And I was like, oh, maybe this could be the one cool thing. However, my mind started to go back to the concept of waste, right? I started to notice in packaging of cannabis for one pre-roll, right? They will use a plastic tube and a box and a thing. And it's like, it's so counterintuitive because the plant inside, right, that we're smoking, it also yields really fantastic fibers from which you can make plastic, from which you can make paper, from which you can make other packaging, right? And I know what you're probably thinking, that I'm going to have some sort of hempen product here, but I do not. Because what I'm talking about today, my friend Bean, is the glass tip. Are you a user of the glass tip?
Well, you have like an interdimensional... Woo! I am not glass tipped at the moment, but I have glass tipped before. Pitch glass tip company called Just the Tip.
All right, we're doing that. Drop in the comments if you want that to be the sponsor of the green pill. We're starting our own like internal economy. Remember when we invented this idea that we just like create a brand that only it's all imaginary money that flows from the brand to the podcast, and it's actually zero actual dollars. We just invent our own currency. I think that's called crypto. That's called crypto. Yeah, we're starting our new country, which will be the actual smallest country in Europe.
It will be what was John Lennon's country? Newtopia.
Yeah. Oh, I love that actually. That's kind of perfect. And the way people can get citizenship is through the DACA program.
That's exactly what John Lennon had in mind. Hey, he did all right.
He did all right. So yeah, so essentially, the thing that I noticed is I am a user of the crutch. I'm a true believer in the fact that the crutch has been a revolutionary cannabis instrument, right? Look, in the last 10, 20 years, we've seen a lot of innovations, right? Flower vapes have gone crazy. They went crazy first. And then dabs and dabulators, and we went from the dome and titanium nail to the quartz bucket, and it's like now we have the Puffco Peak, which is like this like really standard thing, and all these like e-vaporizers or whatever. But a lot of people still smoke flowers. I mean, look, when we go to these events with all these newfangled ways to consume, everyone's still smoking flowers. And I will debate with anyone till the sun comes up that the crutch is the single most impactful innovation in rolling joints of the last like 10 to 20 years, right? I think that there's other arguments to be made. Hemp paper, the raw king size paper, whatever, the cone, a lot more people can roll because of the cone. But the crutch is also in the cone and kind of changed everything, because as soon as you have a foundation for your joint, it makes rolling easier. It sort of makes smoking more economical, right? And in that sense, I'm a huge fan of the tip. But I buy boxes of raw perforated tips, right? And I was sitting there looking at this block of paper. I know like raw is made from recycled materials, but it does create a lot of waste. My ashtrays are filled with joint roaches of these little bits of cardboard, right? So people give us all kinds of stuff all the time, right? And I had a bunch of these glass tips sitting there. So just the other day, I was like, you know what? Instead of being so wasteful and leaving like a pile of roaches in my ashtray, why don't I try rolling with the glass tip, right? Which I'd never done before. And I did, and it is fantastic. It truly is. It's got better feel on your lips. It's got like, it makes for better airflow. You know what I'm saying? And I think that a lot of people who roll with crutches in general look at a glass tip and it's always, oh, something that's in like a fancy pre-roll. You know what I'm saying? But you can be fancy at home very easily. And the great thing about these is you don't have to hold them in your mouth because it's already rolled up. It's not like a little piece of cardboard. So I'm going to recommend to you, Bean, try out the glass tip. I think it's the new wave for home personal rolling. I know some people are already on this, but I know a lot of people still use cardboard crutches. And I will encourage you, go get one of these. They're literally available wherever, in a smoke shop or online. And they're very, very cheap and they're reusable. So in the long run, you will save money. And that's my Andy Rooney-esque rant.
You should have all kinds. You would have a whole desk piled with crutches and dupe tubes. Right? And look at this. All of this.
Digital watches.
I will say the glass tip for me. Here's my endorsement. It lets pretty much anyone feel like a Hollywood starlet. Which I do enjoy. Right. Unfortunately, I'm being told we did just lose a sponsor. Ed's Roach Clips. Suck that shit down to the very end with Ed's Roach Clips. That will be the last ad for him. He's a little
out.
Big Crutch. He's like, oh, Big Crutch got to him. So
it's so funny that there is kind of a big crutch. It's actually interesting. I do think at some point it would be worth exploring. Like, one guy we ran into at Hall of Flowers was Josh Kesselman, right? Who's the guy who basically innovated the raw papers. Is this kind of flamboyant figure, as I've heard, is a little bit polarizing. I really like the guy. I think he's an interesting cat. And also, raw really changed the paper game. I mean, you remember bamboos and zigzags. I mean, where are they now? You know what I'm saying? I mean, they're still around, but I mean, this is like if there was
I'm being told that we lost our bamboo rolling paper. Just mowing them down today.
Mowing them down. Losing sponsors. But yeah, do try the glass tip. I think it's really great. Use thin king size papers. That's my recommendation, but you can also do them. The great thing about it is also you don't have to roll it all the way to the edge of the paper. You can have it sticking out so you can have a longer joint. But Bean, I have some glass tips for you. So next time we see each other, I'll put these in your hand and give it a try. What do you think?
I'm in. I just so no one feels shamed by their own joints. This is my skeleton finger. That's what I'm on.
I will say about the skeleton finger, they fucking work. All right, because you and I have smoked skeleton fingers many a time together. Like, I'm thinking like the early Bong Appetit days. So for anybody who wants to know, since this is a rambly episode of this show, I'll throw in this back. But B and I would always have these like briefings. What did you call it? Prepping?
So that's prepping, safety meeting. Although I feel like people know the code now. So
yeah, but basically before every day of shooting Bong Appetit, Beat and I would like just fucking stand there and like chop it up like we're doing right now and smoke like a massive skeleton finger. And I was always satisfied by those experiences. I don't remember any of the subsequent experiences, but the
Ah! Oh
Fucking
gosh.
A, man. Good shit. So yeah, this was great, man. It's I enjoy this recording this show more and more as we do it. And starting next year, we are going to have the audio version of this show available to our listeners on Spotify. You are Patreon supporters. You'll get the full effect with the video version of the series that you've come to know and love. But we're gonna make Moment and Weed a thing. I'm gonna make a new theme song. I think it's gonna be fun, right? Bean, what do you think?
I'm very, very excited. We're gonna be a session with you every week all year.
Hell yeah. So with that in mind, have a happy holiday from us here. We love you guys. We really appreciate the support. There's a holiday special coming, and it is going to involve some new stuff, right? A review of the year, and then a rebroadcast of an old favorite that I'm sure some of you guys are going to remember and love. So look out for that. Bean, have a happy holiday, man. I miss you already. It's only been a couple of days.
Same. Happy holidays and all good big stuff next year for us and for you.
Yes. Take care of yourselves, guys.